Welcome to the Phat Games podcast. On this episode, we have some very great guests. Like virtually everyone else we've had on the podcast so far, they're indie game developers. And they're also fellow Gumbos from the Gumbo Game Dev Cooperative. I'd like to welcome John and Vinit from Cheap Ramen Games. Thanks for coming, guys.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
How you doing?
Pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
It's a fine Monday.
It's a fine Monday, yeah. Usually we record on Wednesdays, but yeah, the hurricane, at least by the time this airs, the hurricane will be over by several weeks.
I didn't even hear about this hurricane you guys are having until you just mentioned the word hurricane just now.
Hurricane Henry, I think?
Yeah, it's like tropical storm, Henry.
Oh yeah, tropical storm. It's been downgraded, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wait, it's just me staying inside, Henry. That's
yeah. Staying out of the rain.
Yeah.
So, do you guys want to start by giving us a little bit about your background, telling us how you got into the wonderful indie game making racket?
Oh.
Who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go first because I guess mine would lead into Vinit's probably. Maybe we'll see what happens. So I was teaching. I was making games on my own and like teaching in game development for many years at like a bunch of different schools. I was at the New York Film Academy and the Advanced Media Vocational Academy out in LA. And I did a bunch of like small after school programs here, teaching kids how to code and make games. But I always like made games on my own. And then I worked at, my last job was at Normal, the virtual reality company, making games there. And after losing a friend who was also a game developer, I decided to just jump out of working for other people and do my own thing. So several years.
You say you were from LA or you live there?
No, absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
I lived there for like a year, but I am very New York.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned
those opinions are already coming out. The New York opinion.
Nice.
Very much not LA.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you lost a friend. Was that Jose?
That was Jose. We were business partners, me, him, and Rob.
Oh, wow.
So at the New York Film Academy, he was actually a student there at the time. So I met him through like playcrafting stuff. He took the class there, and I was always just running into him, and he was like so friendly, you couldn't not like him. And then him and Rob were working together, and he was a student in the animation program, and I was teaching the games program, and we kept talking. And then they asked me to join their studio. So we were partners for like 2 years and released a game together. And then they started doing commercial projects. And
did you work on Don't Look Away?
I did not. I came on right after that.
Okay.
I worked on The Take.
Okay. Oh yeah. I never played that one, but okay. Yeah. So I guess I was familiar with your work before I was familiar with you.
Nice.
It's always a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've never really talked about Jose on the podcast yet, and I don't know if it's a great time to get into it, but Jose, for our listeners, Jose was someone who's part of the indie game community here in New York and unfortunately lost his life a couple of years ago almost. Wow, time flies. Anyway, happier note. How are you doing, Vinit?
Good, yeah. Doing okay. I can get into my background a bit. It overlaps with John. But I am, I've kind of been into games forever, just like everybody else in indie. For me, it was just like, I remember watching in high school that like dev diary for Halo 2 and being like, oh, I got to get into games. And in college, I interviewed with Bungie. I was like, hey man, like this has been my dream to work at Bungie, specifically because you worked on Halo 2. And he was like, yeah, I mean, no, it's fine. it's nothing too great. And that interview was just like the most low energy thing. So it kind of put me off getting into game development, at least like AAA development for a while. But I knew I wanted to do it. So I was like close to turning 30 at the time. And I was like, I gotta do this. I'm in New York. There's gotta be something around here. And so like I went to a bunch of meetups and like other events, and I think I even joined like EE's meetup. They're like, I don't know if she's part of the ice cream social or she had another meetup going on. But I then took that playcrafting course. Is it 2019? I say the 2019 playcrafting course. And that was the one, they had an info session. Rob and Jose were both doing the info session at the time. And Jose was actually the reason why I joined, because I come from a technical background, so I'm a coder and I knew I could always code. But Jose's big thing about taking that class was about the business side of things, and his pitch for the class was when you take the class, you're going to be introduced to like this huge network of people. And that was kind of what turned me on to it. He was like, he was going to take on teaching like the business end of things and meeting other people. And that was where I was lacking. And so unfortunately, Jose had passed away and John had come on as a kind of substitute teacher at the time. And that's how John and I had met. But I had taken that class with the intention of starting my own studio. And so John and I we decided to work on like a game jam.
Yeah.
Just
to make sure that we didn't fully hate each other.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
a smart idea.
Yeah. So we did a game jam. It was like into the pandemic. I think it was about a couple months into the pandemic. And after that game jam, John had reached out and asked if I wanted to work on this project he was thinking about. And the rest is kind of history.
So your partnership is then fairly new then. This doesn't go back years and years. So now, John, you said you did a lot of like game dev teaching and stuff. Have you always worked in the kind of games area, or even kind of games adjacent, or did you have some other job before this craziness?
I've had lots of jobs. Yeah. So I mean, mostly games, right? That's what I love to do. And yeah, so I worked I went to college for interactive design and game development, and like right after college I couldn't find work. I was mostly doing art for games, and then I started learning to program because no one cares about your art if it's not like this interesting interactive piece. So I started making them interactive, and then I moved out to LA because actually I was interning at Frederator. They were doing like a Adventure Time and such, and that was like super cool. But Fred, who works there, he told me to move out to LA if I was serious about games.
Really?
And then later I found out he just tells everyone to move out to LA. So I moved out there looking to work at one of these bigger studios, and then instead I got a job working at this school, and then I just kept working at different school programs until I was able to build up enough work of my own to then get a job at a studio.
Oh, sweet. How about you, Vinit?
This is my first like foray professionally into games. Prior to this, I've always been into startups forever. So I think I only had one job. I used to work at a trading firm before I moved out to New York. So that was my like a non-startup-y job that I had.
So
for
were you like
bit.
a finance bro?
I was a software developer. I did the trading systems, but yeah, I was definitely surrounded by a lot of finance bros, which is like, it was good. I knew nothing about money going into it, and it was like, it's kind of they teach you super fast. So I took something away from it, but yeah, there's a lot of that. It's not Wolf of Wall Street, but it's definitely got some of those vibes. Yeah, so I startups for a long time. I'm actually working. I have another job that actually helps pay the rent. So I work as a data engineering consultant at a startup that I helped start a little while back, a few years ago. Like right when I moved to New York, so about 5 years ago, I've been with them.
Well, so but games is where the passion is.
Games is where the passion is. Yeah. Hopefully at some point it'll also pay some bills, but until then, yeah, it's just all passion.
So actually, and this is I don't want to depress anyone here, but so someone who actually listens to the podcast, who is also a friend of mine, reached out to me and said, I actually really enjoy the podcast. However, the lesson that I've learned is becoming an indie game developer is extremely depressing because everyone's poor and it's all labor of love. And I was like, hey man, we had a couple successful people on. So I just want to make sure that they're taking away some good stories from this as well. So, but this is like the greatest. We're seeing you guys kind of just basically as you're kind of kicking things off, right? Because you just finished your first game here with Meow Pal.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we get into that?
Sure.
So I like that game a lot. I would describe it as a cutesy air hockey game starring cats. But how would you guys describe it?
I mean, it's pretty spot on. I mean, we definitely say like the pitch is fast-paced, sports-ish game with cats. The inspiration for it was actually knock hockey, not air hockey. The only reason being is the ball comes to a complete stop, right? Whereas air hockey, it still moves slow. But and also knock hockey, I feel like is stupider.
Okay.
Just because it's like you always smash your knuckles and get hurt, and it's just people screaming at each other. I feel like air hockey, you keep your distance, right?
Wait, knock hockey is carom, right? Just for the
carom,
other.
yes.
Okay, got it. I don't know if you guys. I didn't know what knock hockey.
I don't know what it is either, but okay. Well, let's get into that then.
Okay. Knock hockey is like, so imagine if air hockey, it's pretty much, it's very similar to air hockey, except you use long sticks, and it's a wooden puck on a wooden table, and you can reach pretty far. So you'll end up like smashing each other's hands, but also there's a small like wooden block in front of your goal. So you always have to do a shot where it bounces off the wall into the goal, which is like a very core thing of Meow Pow is you can never just make a straight shot into the goal. It always has to go at an angle or bounce.
I'm just looking at like picture this right now. I have seen this before. Where have I seen this before, Blair?
It's a Gumbo on the Gumbo website or something.
Mm-hmm.
No, I remember seeing this in person as a kid.
Probably not as a kid. Why this game?
Yeah, so I when I was still working at Normal, actually scratch that. So for like 6 months, nights and weekends, I was just like building prototypes. I'd build like in a weekend, I'd build like a stupid idea and show it off some people and be like, what do you guys think of this? And they'd be like, oh, this is cool, but I don't know about this, this, and this. I actually, before moving to Gumbo, had an office with Rob and Jose, and I'd often show it to them. And then I started showing it to my students. Vinit was actually one of the first people to play Meow Pow in its earliest form, where there was just no art, but it was just like super fast-paced, hit the ball back and forth. And it was like, okay, what's interesting about these things, because I knew I wanted to leave my job to do to do this full time. So I just didn't have anything to work on, so I want to make sure first day of like being on my own, I'm just hitting the ground running with an idea that has been tested and proven. So it had to fit a few parameters. It had to just be like, had to be fun, right? I feel like some games aren't necessarily fun, but like deep or whatever. It had to be something I can accomplish in a year. And I guess that's it. And it had to be like cheap to make. So it was like, all right, the plan was no AI, which is why it's local multiplayer, but put AI in it anyway. It had to have no story because story would have taken up more time of development. And it just had to be like mechanics focused. So I kind of came up with this. I came up with a bunch of ideas. A first earlier version of Meow Pow, you would grab the ball and bring it to your own goal. And I actually showed that one to Jose, who then told me, this isn't how soccer works, which I don't know sports. So that is why you now go to the other goal with the ball. But yeah, so this seemed like something that was scoped down to a year. It's just like, okay, I built it in a weekend, primarily the core gameplay with 2 controllers. And after showing it off to a few people, they were really into it. So I was just like, all right, cool, let's do this game.
Sweet. And when did Vinit get pulled into it?
So we had a deal for Labor Day, and the idea was we were Labor Day of 2020. We were like, okay, we're gonna start working together. Meow Pow should be out by then, because the idea was it was gonna be 8 months of development. But I started talking to a publisher, and that like pushed everything out. And they wanted to see like a build that could be online ready, so I had to like re-architect everything. So Vinit came on. We started working on a different project Labor Day, and then probably about like November, December, and the idea was, okay, by then we're like we definitely want to work together as a company, because our deal with making this other project that we're working on, we didn't necessarily want to I didn't want to give up half the company yet.
Yeah.
Right. The idea was we have a contract. He owns his work. I own my work. Let's work together for I think it was 6 months. And if 6 months is good, then we'll just, join as each half of the company. And it was going well. So probably about November, December, we're like, oh yeah, we're definitely gonna, work together as, business partners. Why don't you come on, help me finish this? We'll get it out the door, and then we can do full time on this new project. So yeah, not that long ago. I mean, the game only came out in March, but it was still I think 14 months from start to launch.
So, it's actually pretty rare that at least that I've seen, or that I've even seen in Gumbo or in Playcrafting, where two people actually work together and basically start a studio together and, well, quite frankly, get along and have the same artistic vision, because that's not easy. Everyone generally, especially in Gumbo, kind of just wants to do their own thing. So that's pretty awesome. Although there's a lot of husband and wife combos that we've seen, which is also really interesting, because that has its own unique dynamic as well.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like husband and husband.
And husband.
we kind of joke about that. Is we're business partners, but we act as each other's second partners, just because it's kind of the nature of the beast. You're doing so much stuff together.
Spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, than anyone else. Yeah.
So you mentioned a publisher, but Meow Pal doesn't have one. That never panned out, did it? Or did it?
No, they kept being like, we want to see this, we want to see this, we want to see this, and eventually I'm just like, you don't get what I'm doing. And it was just pushing it out to be a 2-year project. And I'm like, this project is not something I want to work on for 2 years. Right. So it kind of, that whole thing fell apart, which is fine. It is what it is. I'm happy with it. I think Vinit's happy with it. It's opened a bunch of doors for us. So it's good.
Nice. So you talked a little bit about the development process. Now, how was what was the development of Meow Pal like? Is it straightforward, or is there lots of challenges and stuff that you had to sort of sort out?
Well, so development started in the end of, it was the last week of January 2020. So no challenges. There's been no challenges the entire year.
No pandemic. None of that
easy
happened.
As could be. No, it sucked. It was cool. I could work from my laptop. But it was I the day I was gonna put in my 2 weeks, I was let go from my job. So it worked out fine. But it was going into that whole thing. Just okay, I got to do this, and then it's all right, I'm stuck at home. It was weird. The only good part about it was I had my laptop and I could work from my laptop. But a big part of it, and a big part where I saw screw ups in other studios I've worked with and other projects I've worked on, was it didn't get enough outside feedback. It didn't get enough play testing early on, and I really lost out on that. And also, I was a solo developer making a 4-player game.
Hard to kind of test that.
Yeah, and in a way that it was oh, this is this is local multiplayer. I need to test it, and everyone's in quarantine. It's being a solo developer in a multiplayer game is bad enough, but it's I see myself and my partner, and she was still working at a restaurant even though it wasn't open. They were prepping for another restaurant in the group, so I'd go there and sit at the counter, and she'd work in the kitchen. And I would just be all right, here's 4 controllers. And eventually I got AI in just so I had someone to play against, and so I could record a trailer. But Yeah, it sucked. I think overall the quality would be better without the pandemic. I'm definitely going to blame that because I can. But you know, the idea was to show it off more and get like earlier feedback and just understand like what the players do and don't like continuously of every build I made. And it, you know, that just it didn't pan out.
So, how did Play NYC go for you guys then? Because you showed this game there, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Vinit, you want to take this one?
Yeah, it was great. Play NYC was honestly it was really really good because after we released Meow Pow, we had a couple other projects come up related to it. We got the game in an arcade cabinet at Wonderville,
Wow.
which was hugely helpful for us just because when you're like we had built the game just for Steam. So when I came on, like I had helped John go through and redo some of the architecture so that it was ready and stable for a build out on Steam. And when we got into Wonderville as an arcade cabinet, we realized that a lot of the shit that we had done in the game was we had to just change it because it like there's so when you're on Steam, we can do things like controller detection, right? So you have controllers that can come up. You have menu systems that appear on a regular game, whereas in an arcade cabinet, usually there are no menus. Players shouldn't be messing around with settings or anything like that, and things should kind of just work always by default.
Mm-hmm.
And that was helpful for us because we just took that build and we just set it up for Play NYC and it was there because we had already kind of polished a lot of that stuff for Wonderville. So that was kind of nice. And, you know, we had gone to Play NYC, just the purpose of that was just meeting people, meeting interesting people, making connections, networking with, you know, potential other publishers and journalists and other people in the industry and other game devs. And so having a game that we didn't have to worry about a build working just at the last minute was super nice. Not having to, we just left the game out there.
Right.
We talked to a bunch of people that came up and played the game, and it was just very kind of stress-free. So like there was a good portion of like Sunday when neither John nor I were at the booth, and we were just walking around and playing everybody else's game and meeting people. And people were still going up to the game and just playing it because we had like the attract mode available. So people were seeing the trailer running when the game wasn't actually playing, and they just go up and pick up a controller and play. And it was super nice.
That's awesome. So you're the second people we've had in the podcast that have had a cabinet set up at Wonderville. So are you guys thinking about doing what Jonah did and try and get some more cabinets out there, or is this just a one-time thing?
This is gonna be a one-time thing.
So it's
we
kind of a one. It's
well, actually,
so,
we'll be in that other right. We'll be at another bar in Brooklyn next month. We actually have to follow up on that. But yeah,
we did for a hot second. We seriously considered what that business model would be like if we decided to pivot. And really, it's just you spend a lot of your time doing sales with that kind of thing. And we had some other people that we had reached out to that have sort of these, you know, at-home arcade cabinet, like these multi-cap kind of setups that you could do. But the sort of work that's involved with that, since with those you need to have online multiplayer and things like that working, and you know, building out netcode for a free game for that kind of thing, it really just didn't. The numbers would not have worked out in our favor, especially if we're trying to work on this other game. So, you know, it was super fun, and maybe at some point John and I will work on a real arcade cabinet game that's just made for that, but definitely not in the near future. We are going to be at there's another bar. I don't know what the other bar is, but we're probably going to be at another bar at some point. So as long as it's like low effort, we'll probably, you know, put arcade cabinets up, but I don't think we're going to pivot anytime soon.
That's our rule for everything. If it's low effort, we'll do it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So you mentioned that you made this game free. So let's talk about that a little bit. What drove the free decision? And because as we know, free is very profitable.
Yeah, it's super easy to make a ton of money when your game makes no money. There's that's how it works. I don't know. It was kind of a tough decision because John had wanted to go in when he was working on the game. He had kind of a price point in mind. I think you were thinking like $15 or something like that. originally for the game, which is sort of standard for an indie game of that size. But we so Gumbo has, and you're part of this player, but we have these, you know, bi-weekly or monthly or once every 2 monthly meetings, depending on whatever the mood of the people is. So we do these like stand-up things with other devs at Gumbo called Scrumbo, and at one of them we had talked about what we had priced the game at, and you know, it had been suggested to us that, you know, maybe put the game out for free, because like what we had when we had kind of done some of the heuristics for how much money we thought we were going to get from the game, it wasn't going to be a lot. You know, the Meow Pow wasn't really meant to be a runaway success. It's a local multiplayer game and it doesn't have any netcode. So you're really limiting your audience there. And there wasn't any real single player component to the game. So we knew it wasn't going to be a ton. But the three kind of main things that we wanted to get out of Meow Pow were, one was experience, just like being able to put a game out on Steam and seeing what that whole process was like. Because there's kind of a little bit involved in like the back and forth with Steam and, you know, getting beta keys up and getting builds out there, and just like releasing a game. The second thing that we wanted was a community, just like a group of people that would be interested in the stuff that we're putting out. So that when we did eventually make a game that was going to make money, we had people to show the game to kind of right off the bat. And the third thing that we wanted was some level of clout. So when we talk to publishers, we could let them know that we have a thing that we made, and it has a decent community behind it. It was made with like an intent, as opposed to just sort of, it was made with the intent for this to be, you know, a long running business, as opposed to just something that was only a passion project. So given those things, we had kind of, in order to optimize the whole, like, how do we get as many people to play this game as possible? How do we build that community? We thought free was the right way to go. Just reduce that barrier to entry as much as possible. And it seems to have worked out a little bit.
Well, what was your sort of goals with that? Like, just how many downloads, if I may ask, did you get, or have you gotten so far?
I think John had kind of put up a goal of he would be happy with something like 20,000 downloads within the first 2 months, and we got that.
Wow.
I think we got to, I don't know what we're at now. I think last time I checked, we're at, I think like 200. We were at like 200 downloads a week, but the average playtime is still super minimal. So like, if people will download free games, they just won't necessarily open it.
Yeah, I got a question on that when you're done. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's basically, we found so using the statistic that Steam gives you, there's just some really kind of baffling behavior that happens on Steam.
The data is kind of ugly. They give you the license. They'll say we've given away this many licenses, but it doesn't mean anyone's downloaded anything. Because I was trying to figure that out with Kids of Karendow when I released the demo. I had like 3,000 downloads within the first few days. I was like, this is awesome. And I was like, look at the stats. I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Yes.
It was like I had now, but when I clean up the data, there's 22 total active users that have actually played it. But those users have actually played it all the way through. But so I just, that's what I really wanted to get at. I wanted to see if your experience was like that too. So do you know how many
similar
totally active users who've actually logged in and played?
I think it's 10% of, it was pretty close to about 10% of what our downloads were.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's changed since. But we do, like, one of the weird things that we found was we're still getting wish lists for the game, which doesn't, usually you wish list the game because you wait for the sale to happen so you can buy it at a cheaper price. But I don't know what a sale for free looks like. It's just,
it probably is not even looking. It's like, oh, that looks good. I'll play it later.
Yeah,
and I just click on wish list.
Yeah. So we've racked up the wish list. Just not really any conversion for those.
All right, so it just sounds like it's challenging no matter how it goes. Thanks for listening to the Phat Games podcast. If you like our content, please consider supporting us by liking this episode and subscribing to our channel. Kids of Karendow Radio will return later this month.